A no-fly zone for Ukraine. What would that mean? Well, before I get into it, this is Gamer1745 here. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button for more interesting videos on what is going on in the world, as well as historical gaming videos. And everyone, hopefully this earns the like button right. No-fly zone over Ukraine. Is this a good idea? Should we do this? First off, we have to know what it means. Making some strange declaration of something is a no-fly zone, that's sort of weird. That is, in a sense, meaningless if you're just making a declaration. But what it is when you do it and when it's been done, is that you use military jets to enforce, meaning shoot down, attack unauthorized aircraft in a no-fly zone. You shoot down anything that is unauthorized, right? So you are committing violence. This isn't just a policing action. This isn't just a feel-good UN resolution. No one should be flying over this space, blah, blah. No, it is a military action. You are going to do, violent things to enforce it. Okay, so now that you understand that, are you still thinking that a no-fly zone is a good idea? Now, a lot of you may want this, and I've even been talking to, as of this last weekend, Ukrainians in Ukraine, them wanting a no-fly zone, and I was trying to tell them they really don't want one because it can get bad, but we'll get to there. It sounds like, hey, that must be great. No, because, hey, we don't want to see civilians bombed in Ukraine. This is an unjustified invasion, because sometimes you have, say, like in Rwanda, a genocide going on, so outside forces just invade a country. If there's a genocide going on, yes, like in the Rwandan genocide, yes, that would have been a justifiable, just military invasion. We can come up with ones like that, but this is not that at all. Okay, so a no-fly zone is declared by either the US or NATO or whoever's going to enforce it. How do you enforce it? The practical measures, right? Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is, when you have an active participant in a no-fly zone, you need to suppress, as you go in, sure, if there are enemy or, let me adjust the language, unauthorized aircraft up in the air, you shoot them down, no matter who they are, because you can't tell for sure who they are. So if for some reason there was a Ukrainian air flight up there that didn't get authorization beforehand, you would shoot it down. So I don't know if there's a passenger jet or a relief flying in relief supplies. I'm not saying there is any of that with what's going on. There may or may not be. I don't know. But you shoot down any unauthorized flights as you encounter them. But your first task is to shoot down all the anti-aircraft or attack all the anti-aircraft systems that might be able to shoot at your aircraft, because no pilots are volunteering to just go in and be targets. This isn't some selfless act. Well, they get to shoot us down. No. So if there are anti-aircraft systems that are belonging to likely opponents, you must take them down as you know about them. Satellite imagery will tell you where a bunch of them are. When they turn on their search radar, that will put out an indication of their location, and you can get that. You can actually fire a missile that will home in on their search radar. Right. So I pulled up. This is from like 2016 here or some time ago, but this will do for the purposes here. And so here we go. We're going to let's just say, enforce a no-fly zone over Ukraine. So aircraft are going to take off presumably either from Poland or from Romania. And they're going to fly in, Romania or Poland most likely. They're going to fly over the Ukraine. Well, as you can see, this is talking about the S-400 anti-air system and the S-300 and confirmed and unconfirmed ranges of the aircraft here, or the anti-aircraft missiles. Right. Well, they very likely have moved some S-400s closer to it. So we would need to attack ground targets inside Russia. Here, because it covers over the no-fly. If we're going to fly aircraft, we've got to do it. There's quite possibly with active operations something closer. Whatever it was that shot down that Dutch flight, I forget, that was coming over this part of the world. No, I think it was an Indonesian flight but a lot of Dutch people were on. I think that's what it was. Shot down. I think they thought it was an S-400, but I don't know. System that was over the sort of Donbass regions. Each side accused the other side of shooting it down. It was very high flying. I don't think it was the Ukrainians, but so there's probably some missile systems like that over here. So we're going to have to be striking Russian territory to stop and likely down in Crimea, whether you call that Russian territory, and maybe Belarus, if they think that those missile systems would be manned by Russians. We know Russian units massively have moved through Belarus into Ukraine, so they're just a true puppet state there. So we must do striking ground targets in Russia as well as likely in Ukraine, because if the Ukrainians are turning on radar, we've got to take it out, because we wouldn't know who's turning on that radar. So we've got to do ground strikes in Russia. What do you think is the likely response of striking ground targets inside of Russia by the Russians? What are they likely to do? They might not start out with all-out nuclear warfare, die everybody in America, because they've got enough missiles, they can die everybody in America. So, but they might do that, okay? So if you're an American or potentially a European, they can die everybody there. Now you think, well, they wouldn't be so mean as to kill all the people. Well, if they believe that the war would escalate to nuclear warfare anyways at some point, they very much may want to launch first to do it. That's, the old Cold War was whoever launches first wins, or I don't know if you win a nuclear war, but maybe take less damage. So there might be a lot of pressure on them just simply to launch nuclear missiles. But let's just for the moment push all-out nuclear war aside. Okay. Well, they're not going to take kindly to their aircraft just being shot down over Ukraine. They very well may target aircraft flying, NATO aircraft flying in other areas, because Kaliningrad here, old Königsberg, is still Russian territory to this day. And we would probably have to attack it. It's a sort of a military outpost, highly militarized zone there. So we would need to attack this, but they would be potentially shooting down, I don't know, civilian air transport flying over this part of the world. So you can see we would need to be striking here. Russian ships that are in the Black Sea, Russian ships that are in the Baltic, they have anti-aircraft systems. They might see an aircraft flying over, think it might be a potential attacker, just decide to shoot it down. So we may very well have engagements in the region, And there, if you don't know, there are submarines stocking submarines as we speak, because both the Russians and the United States and Britain, maybe a few others, have submarines with nuclear missiles sitting on them, ready to fire at other nations. So other nations have submarines that go and try to find them. They do all this all the time and try to trail behind them and keep knowing where they are, so that if they get the word that there might be a nuclear war coming, they can sink the nuclear or the missile submarines around. And of course, the U.S. has them, so the Russians are trailing ours around, we're trailing theirs around, and then we're trailing the ones trailing them. So they're doing all this stuff all this time. I don't know how, if you've seen Hunt for Red October or whatever, sort of get the idea. So we might start seeing, just in random places, submarines targeting each other. So this warfare, this enforcing the no-fly zone, can very quickly spiral out of hand. Now, I don't know of how this is going to turn out in Ukraine. I have no freaking clue. I mean, I can drop likely scenarios that what happens this way or that way, but I don't know what's going to happen. But this, and I'm not going to go into it here, but I really think has become much bigger of a mess than Putin thought it was going to be. My understanding, he's fired a lot of top people that gave him bad advice. So he would probably like some sort of way out that would show that he is winning, if you know what I mean. Well, if this gets escalated to a direct kinetic warfare conflict with NATO, that's going to be less likely to happen. So you're going to see more likely use of, maybe, if the battle for Kiev goes really badly, he may withdraw his forces and put a nuke right. Just one. Just, go boom over Ukraine. And so this might sound good for the Ukrainians, the no-fly zone, but it may turn out to be very, very bad, because he fires or drops or detonates, however you want to say it, because could literally put it in a truck and park the truck and drive quickly. The guys don't have to do a suicide, somehow get out there real quick, and then and sort of hide the truck, or bury the nuke in the ground or something, and get out of the area and then go boom. It may be very, very bad for Ukraine. And after doing a few of those, he may go, now do you want to sign a peace agreement? Give me half of Ukraine or whatever. I don't know. So it could be very bad for Ukraine. And realize, I don't know how good the command and control of Ukrainian forces are. And because there's a lot of militias out there. And if you've given them, which I know the West has given them, Stingers, Starstreak, and other anti-aircraft missiles, some militia guy going to tell the difference between a U.S. plane and a Russian plane? Some would, yes, but others might not. So there might be friendly fire coming up after U.S. or NATO aircraft. And whether they get shot down or not, they're going to return fire. So they would attack Ukrainians. So friendly fire, either against, with losses against NATO aircraft, or taking out Ukrainians, could also escalate with a no-fly zone. Now, why no-fly zones in the past? Why would they be allowed or happen, and we wouldn't see them here with Ukraine? Well, the big famous one, there were two of them within it, was Iraq. I know many of you watching weren't born yet back in the olden days, but Iraq, this country here, invaded very rich, small state, Kuwait. That got condemned by the world, and there was a massive coalition of all kinds of nations, including a whole division full of troops, an armored division, sent over from Egypt, as well as Saudi Arabian troops and others, organized themselves up, and when Iraq refused to withdraw, started an air campaign and then a 4-day ground war. After 4 days, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, enough, stop the war. And they had, they met, and the coalition, it was Schwarzkopf and the U.S. primarily, but they set a ceasefire agreement in front of them. Said, this is it. You want to cease, because there have been momentary. I don't know how much they stopped, but there was that. Do you want this war, this fighting to stop or not? Sign this or not? And I think they got on the phone with some of the details, because Saddam Hussein didn't show up for the meeting in the tent, but relayed whatever the details were of it, and they said, yep, sign it. So they signed the ceasefire agreement. Well, the ceasefire agreement included a no-fly zone down in the south and a no-fly zone up in the north. So Iraq agreed to a no-fly zone. And you go, well, it was like the Chinese often like to talk, unequal treaty. Yeah, it was an unequal treaty. Never been an equal treaty ever in the history of mankind. But, and yes, we had a gun to their head because they invaded Kuwait. They decided to do that, and we responded by shooting at them, and we were going to keep shooting at them unless they agreed to the ceasefire, and as part of it was a no-fly zone. So they agreed to it. So then we were enforcing a no-fly zone for years out there, and they did things like target radars that turned on even in the no-fly in the fly zone areas if they were targeting aircraft in the patrolling aircraft, and we would destroy them. And that is why we've had them in the past. I don't think Pooty Poot, as Bush the Younger liked to call him, is going to agree to a no-fly zone in Ukraine. Now, maybe if there's some sort of ceasefire settlement, some sort of territorial border changes, a demilitarized zone, but I don't think the Russians want the precedent of the idea of NATO getting to fly aircraft over areas that they might like to own one day. So it's highly unlikely that the Russians will agree to it. So whenever you're talking about a no-fly zone for Ukraine, that means NATO or US, or if there's just one country, I don't know if France decides to declare one and do it on their own. It means active intervention in the war. It is an active war. Whether war is declared, they don't seem to do that very often nowadays. But if it's declared or not, it is war. So unfortunately for all of those who want no-fly zones, I must say it's a bad idea to do so, even if the Russians didn't have nukes. It's just a bad idea. But with that, so again, I hope this has earned both a subscription and a like from you. If you have any questions, whether about no-fly zones or other things within the Ukraine war, comments, suggestions, please post them below. I'll try to address them either in a response, typed response, or future video. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful.